Crowds do not watch to see you win. They watch to see you break. The horn shook the marble arena, its deep bellow reverberating through my bones like a death knell. Around me, thousands of spectators leaned forward in their seats, breath held, eyes hungry for the delicious spectacle of someone else's ruin. The moon trials had begun, and I was already losing. My name is Elara Thorne, and 3 days ago I was nobody. The wolfless daughter of a disgraced merchant. The girl who could not shift, could not hear the moon's call, could not offer anything of value to a pack that measured worth in fangs and fury. When my father's debts climbed higher than the marble columns surrounding this arena, the tax collectors did not want coin. They wanted bodies. Mine, specifically. So here I stood in a white ceremonial dress that marked me as unclaimed, unmated, and utterly defenseless. Around me, other young women shifted nervously. Some were here by choice, hoping to catch the eye of a powerful alpha. Others, like me, had no choice at all. The alpha judge sat elevated above us all, a figure carved from shadow and authority. I had never seen him this close. The trials were his domain, held once every decade to settle disputes, forge alliances, and occasionally to select a queen. I kept my eyes down, hoping to blend into the crowd of participants. Lord Thaddeus, the trial master, announced that we would be presented to the alpha judge for inspection. One by one, girls walked forward with varying degrees of confidence. The alpha judge observed with eyes that seemed to see through flesh to the truth beneath. Most were waved through. A few were questioned in voices too low for the crowd to hear. Then my name was called. The walk to the platform felt endless. When I looked up, the alpha judge was younger than I expected, perhaps 30 years, with features that might have been handsome if not so cold. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and his eyes, a striking amber, fixed on me, with unsettling intensity. But it was the scar running from his left temple down to his jaw that made my breath catch, a brutal mark that spoke of violence survived. He announced what everyone already knew. I was the wolfless girl. Gasps rippled through the crowd. He asked why I was here, and I told him the truth about my father's debts. He circled me slowly when I knelt at his command, evaluating like I was livestock at market. His questions were blunt. I could not shift. I had no wolf to call upon. I would die in the arena before the first trial ended. When he asked if I wished to withdraw, I thought about my family losing everything because of my cowardice. So I told him no. I had nothing left to lose. Something flickered in those amber eyes. He marked me for the survival trial, the most brutal challenge where participants were hunted through underground mazes. Most emerged broken. Some did not emerge at all. As I walked away on trembling legs, his voice followed me, pitched low. "Do not make me regret this mercy, little wolf." The holding cells beneath the arena were cramped and cold. 20 of us had been assigned to the survival trial, separated from others who would face different challenges. I found a corner and pressed my back against the damp wall, trying to control my racing heart. Without a wolf, I had no enhanced strength, no accelerated healing, no predatory instincts. I was prey pretending to be a hunter. A girl named Celine approached, beautiful in that effortless way some shifters possessed. She informed me that everyone was talking about me, that the judge should have dismissed me. Then she leaned closer, voice dropping, and told me the alpha judge was cursed. 3 girls had died in the last trials, all chosen personally by him, all found drained of life in their chambers. They said he fed on souls. Before I could respond, a guard announced prisoner viewing. This was not standard protocol. He led us through twisting corridors into a long gallery, lined with iron cells. In each cell stood condemned shifters, criminals so heinous that execution was deemed too merciful. They were kept here, sometimes for decades, slowly losing their humanity to the beast within. The guard explained the new rule. Each participant must choose a prisoner to accompany them in the maze. "Choose wisely," he said. "They would be our only allies." Most prisoners leered and made crude suggestions as the other girls evaluated them like horses at market. At the very end of the gallery, in the darkest corner, sat a prisoner who seemed utterly uninterested in the proceedings. His chains were heavier than the rest, secured with locks that glowed faintly with enchantment. When I asked why he was different, the guard said he was too dangerous, cursed. 3 years ago, he had been the kingdom's most decorated warrior. Then he killed 17 men in a single night, including his own commanding officer. Said he could not control the beast. The prisoner lifted his head, and I saw his face for the first time. Younger than I expected, perhaps late 20s, with features that spoke of noble birth marked by hardship. Dark stubble covered his jaw. Tangled hair fell past his shoulders. But his eyes stopped me cold. They were the same striking amber as the alpha judges, gleaming with inner fire both beautiful and terrifying. He told me to walk away, that he was not what I needed. When I asked what I needed, he said someone who would not eat me alive the moment we were alone. Despite everything, I laughed. At least he was honest. He knew about me. The guards talked. They thought I would die within the first hour. He studied me with unnerving intensity and agreed they were probably right. But I looked at his heavy chains, the enchanted locks, the way guards gave his cell wide berth. This man was powerful and feared, and something about those amber eyes nagged at me. I announced loudly that I chose him. The gallery fell silent. The guard sputtered that he was off limits, but I pointed out that refusing my choice would undermine the alpha judge's rules. It was a gamble based on half-heard gossip and pure instinct. The guard stalked away to seek guidance. The prisoner watched me with an unreadable expression and asked if I had a name. When I told him Elara, he introduced himself as Kale. He said I had just made a terrible decision. I agreed that I most definitely had. Heavy footsteps announced the arrival of Lord Thaddeus, who demanded to know if I truly wished to pair with the cursed prisoner. When I explained my reasoning, he fetched the alpha judge to decide the matter. The alpha judge entered, amber eyes finding me immediately. Something passed between him and Kale when their gazes met, a look I could not decipher. When asked why I wanted this prisoner, I explained that everyone else chose based on strength or intimidation. I could not compete on those terms, so I chose based on honesty. Kale had told me he was dangerous. That gave him more credibility than any promises the others made. The alpha judge was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled, cold and predatory. He granted my request, hoping aloud that I would survive long enough to regret it. As he left, Kale laughed softly, a sound devoid of humor. We both acknowledged that neither of us had anything left to lose. They removed Kale's chains in a heavily guarded chamber, 10 warriors with silver-tipped spears forming a circle. The enchanted locks fell away with sounds like breaking glass. As they led us to separate maze entrances, Kale looked back once and told me simply to stay alive. The maze was a nightmare of stone and shadow. Passages branched in every direction, some climbing upward, others descending into deeper darkness. Within minutes, I was hopelessly lost. I tried to keep track of turns, but the air was thick and cold, making each breath feel like swallowing ice. A dead end forced me to backtrack. Approaching footsteps made me choose a spiral, staircase descending into absolute darkness. The stairs went on forever, each step treacherous with moisture. At the bottom, I found a vast chamber lit only by bioluminescent fungi casting everything in eerie green glow. 3 prisoners stood in the center, but their participants were nowhere to be seen. They recognized me immediately. The wolfless girl, all alone. They surrounded me slowly, savoring my fear. When I reminded them that rules forbade harming other participants, their leader laughed. "Accidents happened in the dark," he said, "especially to those too weak to defend themselves." My back hit a wall. There was nowhere left to run. Then the temperature dropped so suddenly that frost formed on stone, my breath misting white. From the darkness beyond, something approached, not footsteps, but the whisper of claws on stone, a low growl that resonated in my chest. A wolf emerged from shadows, massive, easily twice the size of a normal shifter's wolf form, with fur so black it seemed to absorb light. Its eyes burned with amber fire, and when it bared its teeth, they were too long, too sharp, wrong in ways that made my hindbrain scream danger. Kale told me to run. His voice came from the wolf's throat, distorted but unmistakable. I bolted blindly while behind me. Screams erupted. I did not look back. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs threatened to give out. When I finally stopped in another chamber, I collapsed against a wall, hands shaking. Kale had saved me. But the form he had taken, the wrongness of it, confirmed every whispered rumor. He was cursed, his wolf twisted into something monstrous. He appeared a few feet away, human again, breathing hard, blood speckling his bare chest where his shirt had torn. In the green light, he looked almost otherworldly, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. When he asked if I was hurt, I said no. He had saved me. He explained that I was his responsibility now. That was the deal. But I pointed out the deal was to reach, and the center together. He could have left me to those men. His amber eyes still held traces of the wolf, flickering like flames behind glass. He moved closer and told me he saved me because I chose him when everyone else saw only a monster. Because I stood before the alpha judge and demanded honesty, even knowing it might kill me. Because I was either the bravest or most foolish person he had ever met. And he found himself curious to discover which. I denied being either, just desperate. He said desperation bred either cowardice or courage, and I had chosen courage. He extended his hand. We had a center to reach, and sunset was approaching. I placed my hand in his, and he pulled me to my feet with effortless strength. His grip was warm, calloused from years of fighting. Together we moved deeper into the labyrinth, and he did not let go of my hand. The maze shifted as we moved through it, walls grinding against stone with sounds like distant thunder. Entire sections would close behind us while new passages opened ahead. Kale explained it was designed this way every year, preventing anyone from memorizing the path. He was following instinct. The curse made his wolf more sensitive, and he could feel the center like a pull in his chest. We entered a chamber where walls were covered in ancient carvings, showing scenes of battles and hunts. Kale studied them with intensity that suggested recognition. I traced my fingers over weathered stone, recognizing they told a story. The story of the first Alpha King and the curse that bound his line. The images showed a powerful king standing before a cloaked figure. In the next panel, the king was transforming, but his wolf form was wrong, twisted. The final panel showed him kneeling before a woman who held a crown above his head, but her face had been deliberately defaced. I realized aloud that the alpha judge was cursed too. That was why rumors existed, why people whispered. And Kale was connected to him somehow. The amber eyes, the curse, the way the judge had looked at him. He was not just some random prisoner. Before Kale could answer, a scream echoed through the maze. We froze. The scream came again, followed by running footsteps and something heavy giving chase. We were trapped between whatever was coming. Kale's eyes flashed amber, his body tensing as the wolf rose close to the surface. I asked if he could shift without losing control. He said not reliably. Then we would face this together as humans, I decided. I was tired of being helpless. He pulled a knife from his boot and pressed it into my hand. Aim for eyes or throat, he instructed. Do not hesitate. Hesitation kills. A female participant burst into the chamber, dress torn and bloody. She screamed for help. Something massive slammed into her from behind, driving her to the ground with bone-crushing force. The predator that stood over her made my blood turn to ice. It was a shifter, but wrong, like Kale. Body too large, limbs elongated, joints bending at unnatural angles. Foam dripped from its muzzle, eyes completely white and devoid of intelligence. This was a lost one. A shifter who had gone completely feral. Humanity burned away by rage or madness or curse. The creature charged. Kale intercepted it before it could reach me. tumbling across stone in a tangle of limbs and fury. He fought as a human, using technique against brute strength, but he was outmatched. The Lost One's claws raked across his chest. I ran forward without thinking, and drove my blade into the creature's exposed flank. It shrieked and rounded on me. Kale wrapped his arm around its throat from behind and shouted at me to run. But I could see what was happening. He was losing control, eyes flickering amber, teeth lengthening. He was going to shift, and there would be 2 monsters in this chamber. Unless I gave him a reason not to. I stumbled forward and forced him to look at me instead of the thrashing creature in his grip. I told him to stay with me, to not let it take him, to stay human. His eyes met mine, amber fire warring with something deeper, something human. The transformation rippling beneath his skin paused, held at bay by sheer will. Then I did something that made no logical sense, driven by pure instinct and desperate hope. I kissed him. It was fierce and claiming, my hands fisting in his hair. My body pressed against his despite the monster between us. I poured everything into that kiss, every ounce of defiance and courage and stubborn refusal to accept death. Power surged through the connection, golden and warm, wrapping around us both. Kale's wolf subsided, retreating behind walls of his control. The Lost One in his grip went suddenly still, then began to shrink, its twisted form collapsing until a man lay unconscious on the floor. We broke apart, both breathing hard. Kale stared at me with wide eyes, shock and something raw and wondering written across his face. He asked what I had just done. I had no idea. A slow clap echoed through the chamber. The Alpha Judge stood in the passage behind us, his scarred face expressionless. He observed that I was more than I appeared. When I demanded to know what that power was, he said I should ask my companion. After all, Kale knew exactly what I was, even if I did not yet. We had reached the center through the eastern passage, the judge announced. We had survived the first trial, but the true tests had only just begun. Then he was gone, leaving us with questions and the unconscious form of the Lost One. Kale looked at me, expression unreadable. He said we needed to talk. I agreed, but first I needed him to tell me one thing. Who was he really, and what was I? He took a deep breath. He was Prince Kale Blackthorn, younger brother to the Alpha Judge, and I was his fated mate. The center of the maze opened to a courtyard beneath stars instead of another cramped chamber. Torches ringed the space, illuminating a raised platform where officials waited. 15 participants had reached the center before sunset, including Celine, who looked surprised to see me alive. The Alpha Judge raised his hand for silence and explained the second trial. We would each drink moon wine blessed with truth magic, revealing our deepest fear, greatest desire, and most carefully guarded secret. Those who could face these truths would advance. Those who could not would be removed. Servants appeared carrying silver trays, each with a goblet filled with dark liquid that shimmered in torchlight. Truth magic was notoriously unpredictable, capable of driving a person mad if their secrets were too dark or fears too overwhelming. The first participant confessed after drinking. She feared she was not worthy, desired power above all else, and had poisoned her sister to take her place. Guards removed her immediately. One by one, participants drank and confessed. Some revealed minor secrets. Others exposed darkness that made the crowd recoil. 3 were removed before my turn. The Alpha Judge himself extended a goblet toward me. Our fingers brushed, electricity sparking between us. Similar to what I felt with Kale, but different, colder, more dangerous. He commanded me to drink and show who I truly was. The moon wine tasted of starlight and ash, sweet and bitter. The moment it touched my throat, the world tilted. I drowned in visions, in truths pulled from my soul's depths. My deepest fear appeared first. I stood in my childhood home watching my father count coins with desperate hands. He called me worthless, said a daughter without a wolf was a burden they could not afford, that they should have drowned me at birth. The fear that I was fundamentally unlovable rose up to choke me, but I pushed through it. Next came my greatest desire. I saw myself standing before a mirror, but the reflection was wrong. Silver eyes glowed back at me. In the vision, I was whole, complete. I desired not power or wealth, but simply to belong, to be more than the wolfless girl everyone pitied. Then came the secret buried so deep I had not known it existed. A woman with silver hair and eyes like mine knelt before a hooded figure, begging them to take her wolf, to seal it away so her daughter could live free from the curse. The hooded figure agreed, saying the price was steep. The girl would seem wolfless, broken, rejected and reviled. But when the time came, when she found her fated mate, the seal would break. She would become what she was always meant to be. My mother accepted, willing to bear any consequence to save me. The vision shattered. I gasped, falling to my knees. Through the chaos, I heard my own voice speaking truths I had just learned. I feared being unlovable because I was broken. I desired to be whole. My secret was that my mother sacrificed her wolf to seal mine away, protecting me from a curse I did not yet understand. Silence fell like a physical weight. The alpha judge descended from the platform and crouched before me, asking who my mother was. I told him. Eliana Thorne. He asked about my grandmother. I never knew her, but her name came automatically, pulled by lingering truth magic. Seraphina. Seraphina Blackthorne. The courtyard erupted. Kale was suddenly there, pulling me to my feet, positioning himself protectively. He told the crowd I did not know. The seal had hidden everything, including my own bloodline. Lord Thaddeus sputtered that it was impossible. The Blackthorn line died out generations ago, except for the cursed branch that was exiled and presumed extinct. The Alpha Judge explained to the crowd that I descended from the cursed bloodline of Blackthorn. My mother sealed my wolf to protect me from manifesting the curse. But the seal was breaking, as evidenced by power I displayed in the maze. Someone shouted that I was dangerous and should be removed. The judge said the contrary. I was exactly where I needed to be. He revealed that the moon trials existed not merely to choose a Luna, but to break the curse that plagued their line for centuries. I may be the key they had been searching for. Or, Celine called out, I could be the destruction of them all. The judge commanded that I be taken to the royal chambers to rest and prepare for what came next. He told Kale quietly to keep me safe. I was more valuable than he knew. As Kale led me away, I felt every eye weighing, judging, fearing me. I had entered these trials as nobody. Now I was a threat, a mystery, a potential weapon in a war I did not understand. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the seal that kept me human, I felt something stir. Something silver and ancient and powerful, waiting to be free. The royal chambers in the highest tower were lavish beyond anything I had experienced. When I told Kale I could not rest until he explained everything, he sighed and settled into a chair, beginning the story. The Blackthorn curse began 300 years ago with the first Alpha King, Aldrich Blackthorn. He sought out a sorceress to grant immortality for his bloodline. She agreed, but curses always came with conditions. Every Blackthorn born with amber eyes would be cursed with unstable control over their wolf. The beast would be stronger, faster, more powerful than any normal shifter, but also harder to control, hungry for dominance and violence. If an amber-eyed Blackthorn took the throne without finding their true mate, the curse would spread through their entire pack. Kale was kept prisoner because he killed 17 men when he lost control. Good men, warriors he had trained with. The beast took over completely. His brother had no choice but to lock him away. The Alpha Judge also had amber eyes and sat in judgment over the moon trials because he desperately searched for his fated mate, the one person who could help him control the curse and take the throne without destroying everything. My mother sealed my wolf because I carried Blackthorn blood, Kale explained. But my situation was different. I descended from Aldrich's younger brother, who refused the sorceress's bargain and was exiled. He married outside the pack, had children who carried diluted blackthorn blood. My line had been hidden for generations, living as humans or wolfless shifters to avoid the curse's attention, but I was not deluded. My grandmother, Seraphina, was born with silver eyes, a sign that she carried pure blackthorn power without the curse's taint. The sorceress's magic never touched her line. Silver-eyed blackthorns were the key to breaking the curse. According to legend, a silver-eyed heir who mated with a cursed amber-eyed blackthorn would create balance. The silver could contain the amber's wildness while the amber protected the silver's purity. Together they could break the cycle. Kale knew the moment he saw me in the gallery. His wolf recognized what I was, even with my power sealed. When I kissed him in the maze, I broke through his control, not by forcing him human, but by offering my wolf to balance his. I gave him something to anchor to besides rage. I moved to the window, staring at the city below. None of this made sense. I had no wolf, could not shift, could not sense the moon's call. Even with my power sealed, I had felt nothing for 20 years. Kale came to stand behind me. The seal was breaking. That power I felt in the maze was my wolf beginning to wake. The moon wine accelerated the process by forcing me to confront truth. Now that I knew what I was, the seal could not hold much longer. When it broke, I would become what I was always meant to be. A silver wolf, pure and powerful, capable of balancing the curse in any amber-eyed blackthorn I bonded with. I turned to face him and asked if that was all I was to him. A cure for his curse. He said no fiercely. I was his mate. The pull he felt toward me had nothing to do with the curse and everything to do with his soul recognizing mine. He reached up to cup my face. He did not ask for this. To be cursed. To kill men he loved. To spend 3 years in a cell. But he also did not ask to find someone who looked at me and saw past the monster. Someone brave enough to kiss him in the middle of a fight. I was not just a cure. I was hope. Tears burned my eyes. I did not know how to be what everyone needed me to be. He told me not to be what they needed. Be myself. That fierce, stubborn, impossibly brave girl who refused to kneel before his brother. That was who he needed. Before I could respond, a sharp knock sounded. The alpha judge needed to speak with his cousin. Alone. Kale positioned himself between me and the door, but eventually left at his brother's command. The alpha judge studied me in silence before speaking. My mother loved me very much, he said gently. He knew of her. Seraphina had sent word before she died, saying the silver line survived and there was still hope for their family. But by the time they received the message and tried to find them, they had disappeared. My mother went into hiding, married a merchant, lived as human to protect me. He moved to the window and told me something few people knew. The moon trials were his last chance to break the curse before it broke him completely. He was turning 30 in 6 months. That was when the curse reached its peak in amber-eyed blackthorns. After that, if he had not found his true mate and broken the curse, he would lose control completely and permanently. He would become like the lost one I saw in the maze. That was why he was so desperate to find a mate, and why finding me changed everything. His brother believed I was Kale's fated mate. Perhaps I was. But there was another possibility. That I was meant for him. I denied it immediately. I felt the bond with Kale. I knew what he was to me. The alpha judge moved closer until I backed into the wall. Did I really? He asked. Or did I feel blackthorn blood recognizing blackthorn blood? The curse drawing me to amber eyes that needed balancing. His hand lifted, fingers brushing my cheek. Unlike Kale's warm touch, this was ice and lightning, painful in its intensity. His brother was a good man, the judge said softly. But he was not the one who needed me most. If the judge fell to the curse, the entire kingdom fell with him. But if I was his mate, if my silver wolf could balance his amber beast, we could rule together and break the curse for all future generations. He was asking me to consider which choice saved more lives. The moon trials had 3 more challenges, he said. By the end, truth would reveal itself. If I was truly Kale's mate, the bond would solidify undeniably. But if I was his, fighting it would only bring more pain. He stepped back and told me to think carefully. The decision I made would determine not just my fate, but the fate of everyone in this kingdom. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with a choice I did not want to make. I did not sleep. At dawn, servants arrived to dress me in silver that shimmered like moonlight, with intricate embroidery forming symbols I did not recognize. They fastened a silver cloak and placed a circlet of twisted metal on my head. "The garb of a blackthorn heir," they whispered. When I emerged, Kale waited, his breath caught. I told him I looked like a lie, still the same wolfless girl. He disagreed. I was who I had always been. I just finally knew the truth of it. We descended to the arena floor where the third trial would take place before thousands of assembled spectators. Only 8 participants remained. The alpha judge announced the trial tested loyalty. Each prisoner must choose between their freedom and their partner's advancement. If they chose freedom, the participant was eliminated. If they chose advancement, they remained imprisoned. One by one, participants were called forward. Most prisoners chose freedom without hesitation, eliminating their partners. By the time it was my turn, only 3 participants remained. The alpha judge revealed Kale's true identity to the crowd, causing an eruption of shock. He offered Kale freedom if he walked away, leaving me eliminated. Or Kale could choose to remain imprisoned, allowing me to advance. But the judge added a cruel condition. If I won the trials and was chosen as Luna, Kale would never be released. The cursed prince could not roam free, while his mate ruled beside another. He would spend the rest of his life in that cell, watching me from a distance, knowing I was forever beyond his reach. I whispered for Kale to take his freedom, that I released him from any obligation. He refused. I did not understand. If I won, he lost everything. He turned to face me, ignoring thousands of watching eyes. 3 years ago, he lost control and became a monster. He spent every day since drowning in guilt and shame, believing he deserved to suffer. But then I walked into his cell, looked at him without fear, and chose him when everyone else saw only danger. I gave him something he thought lost forever: hope, purpose, a reason to fight the curse instead of surrendering. He would not take his freedom if it meant losing me. He chose to stay, chose my advancement, chose me, now and always. Tears streamed down my face. That was not fair to him. He said life was not fair, but love was honest, and he loved me. Cursed blood, silver wolf, impossible situation and all. The alpha judge stood and announced Kale's choice. I advanced to the final trial. The crowd roared, but I barely heard. I was staring at Kale, memorizing every detail of his face. When guards moved forward to separate us, I told him I loved him too. I did not know what that meant or what happened next, but I knew that. He kissed me fierce and desperate, pouring everything into that moment. As guards led him away, he called back for me to fight. Fight for us. Do not let duty steal what we could have. The alpha judge announced the final trial would begin tomorrow, at moonrise. As the crowd dispersed, Celine appeared at my side, her face twisted with rage, hissing that I thought my cursed bloodline made me special. But I was still wolfless, still weak. Tomorrow, when the real test came, we would see what I was truly made of. I told her I looked forward to it, because she was right. Tomorrow would reveal the truth of what I was, and whether I chose duty or love, I would finally know my own strength. The moon rose full and bright, and for the first time in my life I felt it calling to me. Not with words, but with a pull deep in my chest where something silver and ancient stirred, finally ready to wake. The final trial took place in a sacred grove outside the city walls. Ancient oaks formed a circle around a clearing, their branches heavy with silver leaves that whispered secrets. The 3 remaining participants stood apart while the alpha judge entered, flanked by officials, and the high priestess, an ancient woman whose clouded eyes still held sharp intelligence. She announced the final trial was the oldest of all. It tested the very soul. We would each drink the moon's blessing and enter the spirit realm to face our true self, the wolf within. Only one whose wolf accepted the burden of Luna would return successfully. She produced 3 crystal goblets filled with liquid that seemed to contain the moon itself, glowing and swirling with impossible light. Mira went first, her body convulsing once before going still. Celine drank next, and the moment liquid touched her lips, terror crossed her face. She screamed and collapsed. Her wolf had rejected her. I approached the high priestess on shaking legs. The alpha judge watched with unsettling intensity. The priestess told me to drink and remember. The wolf showed only truth. Whether I could accept that truth determined everything. The moon wine tasted like starlight and thunder. The world tilted, and I fell into silver darkness. When I opened my eyes, I stood in a forest of moonlight and shadow, trees impossibly tall with star-laden branches. A massive wolf watched me from between trees. Silver-white fur shimmered like captured moonlight. Her eyes were my shade, dark but shot through with silver threads. She confirmed she was my wolf, sleeping for 20 years, waiting for the seal to break, waiting for me to be ready. I confessed I was not ready. Everyone expected me to be something I was not. The alpha judge wanted his savior. Kale wanted his mate. The kingdom wanted someone to break a curse I barely understood. But I was just a girl who could not shift, who never belonged anywhere. My wolf said gently that I was more than that. I was Elara Thorn, descended from Seraphina Blackthorn, keeper of the silver line, brave enough to walk into trials that should have killed me, compassionate enough to see past a monster's curse, strong enough to stand before kings without kneeling. When I said I did not know how to break the curse or choose between Kale and duty, she told me to stop trying to be what everyone needed. Be what I was. Let her show me. She explained the sorceress who cursed the Blackthorn line did not do so from malice. She did it because Aldrich refused to pay the real price of his wish. He wanted his descendants to rule forever, to have unmatched power. She gave him that power but also gave him a test. Only a Blackthorn who could master both the Amber Beast and their own pride would be worthy of the crown. Understanding dawned. The curse was not a punishment. It was a challenge. My wolf confirmed that the silver line was meant to be the answer, not by mating with one cursed heir to save him, but by teaching all cursed heirs to find balance within themselves. I was not meant to be a cure, but a teacher, a guide, helping them remember their humanity when the beast roared. I asked desperately about Kale, who said I was his fated mate. My wolf said gently that I was. But being a fated mate did not mean I existed only to fix him. It meant I complimented him, challenged him, helped him become the best version of himself. The bond worked both ways. He saved me just as much as I saved him. When I asked about the alpha judge possibly being my mate, she said Damon carried his own burden, but he was not mine to carry. His path required different strength, one that must come from within. I could help him understand that, but I could not be his salvation. My wolf told me to wake up and return to the grove. Tell them the truth. The curse could be broken, but not through one mating ceremony or one Luna's sacrifice. It would be broken when every cursed Blackthorn learned to balance beast with human, when they stopped searching for someone to fix them and started doing the hard work themselves. I said they would not want to hear that. They wanted a simple answer, a magical solution. She replied that true change was never simple, but I was strong enough to deliver the hard truth. She stepped forward, pressing her forehead against mine. Power surged through the connection, warm and bright and vast as the sky. The seal shattered like glass, and suddenly I could feel her, truly feel her, not as something separate but as an extension of my own soul. Then the spirit realm faded, and I opened my eyes in the sacred grove. I lay on furs, staring up at the moon, feeling its light as a living presence for the first time. Around me, gasps and murmurs rose. Someone whispered that my eyes were glowing. I sat up slowly. The alpha judge stared at me with wonder and dread. "True silver," he breathed. I looked at my hands and saw skin glowing faintly with the same moonlight shimmer as my wolf's fur. The seal had not just broken but shattered completely, releasing power compressed and building for 20 years. The high priestess announced I had met my wolf and been accepted. I alone passed the final test. The crowd erupted, but I only had eyes for the alpha judge, who looked at me with amber eyes holding hope and fear equally. He said quietly that I won. I was Luna. I told him no. Shocked silence fell. When Lord Thaddeus sputtered, I repeated myself. I did not enter these trials to become Luna. I entered because I had no choice. But now I did have a choice, and I chose to finish what I started. I turned to face the crowd. The moon trials were created to break the Blackthorn curse, but they had been looking for the wrong solution. The curse could not be broken by finding one perfect mate for one cursed heir. It could only be broken when every cursed Blackthorn learned to balance their beast with their humanity. When they stopped searching for someone else to fix them and started doing the hard work themselves. Someone shouted blasphemy. I countered with truth. The silver line existed not to cure them but to guide them, to teach them that power and control were not opposites but partners. And the first lesson was that no one person could save them. Not a Luna, not a mate, not a kingdom. They must choose to save themselves. The alpha judge moved closer, asking what of my choice. What of Kale? I said clearly that Kale was my fated mate, but being fated did not mean we could not choose. It meant our souls recognized each other before our minds did. What we did with that recognition was up to us. I looked at Damon directly. He wanted me to be his Luna, to save him from the curse. But I could not save him. Only he could do that. The beast he feared was not his enemy but part of who he was. Stop fighting it and start understanding it. That was how he broke the curse, not through me, but through himself. For a long moment, he stared at me. Then, incredibly, he smiled. A real smile, genuine and warm. His brother chose well, he said quietly. I was right. He had been looking for the wrong solution. Perhaps it was time he found the right one. He turned to the high priestess. Elara Thorne had won the moon trials, but as she chose not to accept the position of Luna, the throne remained unclaimed. He would continue his search, and trials would be held again in 1 year. In the meantime, I was granted full rights as a member of the royal family. My bloodline was recognized, my wolf acknowledged, my wisdom respected, and Prince Kale Blackthorn was hereby released from imprisonment, pardoned for his crimes, and free to live as he chose. My heart stopped. Damon said that if I could teach him to face his curse, perhaps I had already taught his brother. Kale deserved the chance to prove it. Kale appeared at the grove's edge, still in prison clothes, eyes searching until they found mine. We moved at the same time, meeting in the center with a collision that was half embrace, half desperation. He buried his face in my hair, shaking. He heard everything, he whispered. Every word. I was a beautiful, impossible, brave fool. I could have been Luna. I replied that I could have been many things, but I chose to be with him. If he would have me, curse and all. He pulled back to look at me, tears on his cheeks. I was the only thing he ever wanted. His mate, his match, his home. He would spend the rest of his life learning to control the beast, not because the curse demanded it, but because I deserved a man who could stand beside me without destroying everything he loved. I said we would learn together. That was what mates did. He kissed me, and this time there was no desperate urgency, no fear of separation. This time it was a promise, a beginning, a choice we both made freely. When we finally broke apart, the moon had reached its zenith, bathing the grove in silver light. My wolf stirred within me, content and complete. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever curses still needed breaking, I would face them with Kale at my side. Not as Luna, not as a cure, but as myself. Elara Thorn, Silver Wolf, Cursed Blood, impossible girl who dared to choose love over duty and found that the two were never as separate as everyone believed. The moon trials were over, but our story was just beginning. And for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged.